Hello guys, these have been very interesting days for wrestling, so let's talk about it. And there's a particular subject that I want to address because I found it interesting and a little annoying. And it's about this professional wrestling versus sports entertainment discussion. But before we get started, there are some things that I want to say. First, I want to apologize in advance about my English pronunciation and vocabulary. I'm not an English native speaker, so I'm sorry if I'm not that good at it, or if I use words that are out of context. I'm trying to get better at it, and this is a good way to practice it. Second, I know how the wrestling community has been for decades, but particularly since AEW debuted and became the second biggest promotion in America, the tribalism and toxicity for one brand or another have infested the discussions about wrestling with biased opinions that became on the most part dirty talk. The purpose of this video is not to only bring my most sincere opinion about the subject, but also in order to encourage the debate with respect, without tribalism and fanboyism, to whoever is interested in it. So, with these things aside, let's get started. This professional wrestling versus sports entertainment topic has been in discussion, as far as I'm concerned, for at least 2 years within the community. I have seen a lot of posts in social media like Facebook or Reddit that talks about it, and the issue starts because apparently this thing that WWE calls sports entertainment is different from the pro wrestling we all know. And these apparent differences between one style or another and which one is better is where the discussion begins. This differentiation has been addressed not only by fans but also wrestlers. For example, Chris Jericho's actual gimmick is this guy that's self-proclaimed as an sports entertainer. When CM Punk made his return to wrestling in AEW, his first promo was him claiming that he left professional wrestling when he joined WWE. WWE banning words like wrestler or belts or divas from everything they do and replacing them with words like superstars for the wrestlers and title for their championships, and themselves claiming that what they do is just that, sports entertainment. Unfortunately, this discussion has become another way to perpetuate the war between WWE and AEW. Because if the sports entertainment has WWE as his representative, the one for pro wrestling is, you guessed it, AEW. It became another scenario to keep the fanboys fighting with each other on which one is better, AEW or WWE, pro wrestling or sports entertainment. And if you have watched both shows, you can tell there are a lot of differences between one and another, being the most noticeable one, the time of actual wrestling exposed on TV. WWE style has a prevalent use of what I call out of the ring narrative. Meanwhile, AEW is more balanced in terms of exposition between what they show out and inside the ring. After that, we have other obvious things like booking style, direction, production, roster, etc. But even with those distinctions and other with good name, in my own perspective, pro wrestling and sports entertainment are exactly the same. Because sports entertainment is nothing more than American pro wrestling made by WWE. And AEW makes American Pro Wrestling too, just as WCW made it, or TNA, Impact, GCW, you name it. At the end, the difference lies in style over substance, and this substance is what makes all these products similar, in their essence and identity. Let's analyze from the general to the particular. First of all, what is that differentiates the American wrestling from something like Mexican lucha libre or Japanese puroresu? As far as I know, American wrestling focuses on narrative and storytelling. These narratives are told using resources such as promos, backstage segments, in-ring segments, video packages, in-ring performance, and sometimes social media posts. On a general level, all these resources are used on both companies, and almost in every other American promotion. Now, let's talk about the particular. As mentioned before, WWE Sports Entertainment is supposed to be more focused on the show and entertainment part. On the contrary to AEW, there is more focus on the wrestling part. And I agree. The most notorious difference I can find between them is the wrestling time exposed on television, because even their weekly show serves the same goals and purpose. The weekly show is where the storylines, characters, and rivalries develop, in order to be resolved generally on a pay-per-view or in these new special shows they've been doing lately. WWE's style is to build everything for their pay-per-views, even at the cost of having less than 30 minutes of wrestling in a 3-hour show. Meanwhile, AEW has a better distribution between storyline development and wrestling. And I'm not gonna say if this or that is good or bad, because that is another discussion. But personally, I don't think this time difference is enough to separate both styles from what American Pro Wrestling is. Because if that's the case, how do we know when the product we are watching is pro wrestling or is a sports entertainment? If the show is 2 hours long and they have 30 minutes of wrestling, then it's a sports entertainment? If they have 16 minutes, it's pro wrestling, and if the 2 hours are full of matches, then it's, I don't know, pure super pro wrestling? That seems a little arbitrary to me. And talking about the entertainment part, this is where I found the most similarities between each product. Because as I told you before, the American contribution to wrestling was the introduction of the spectacle and show in addition to it. And yes, Americans weren't the first on making a promo or a storyline, but as far as I'm concerned, we're the first on presenting wrestling as an attraction, with an episodic development of storylines in their weekly shows, and a lot of elements and spots that sometimes aren't related to the wrestling itself, but are added for the entertainment of the spectators. And this isn't even something new. It's not that American wrestling started doing this 10 years ago, or that it's exclusively made by WWE. Historically, this is how the product has been developed at least since the 90s, and right now, it's something that as wrestling fans can relate to. Because even with its highs and lows, the majority of us grew up watching and enjoying it independently of our brand preferences or the time when we started watching it. And this topic is something that probably we'll keep discussing and watching in the next few years, because it creates a lot of controversy and provokes different kind of reaction and fans. But in my opinion, making this a strict division of sports entertainment and pro wrestling, pretending that they are something completely different just for the sake of a few fans that are trying to break away from the other company, either for their toxicity or tribalism, is not only fooling ourselves and having a double standard, but also means deny the identity and forget the importance of what Americans contributed to the wrestling world, not only as a business, but culturally worldwide as well. Wrestling can be a lot of things. Here in Mexico, lucha libre is considered a form of art, culture, tradition, sport, history, but also entertainment. And American Pro Wrestling came up with a great idea, and that was adding the show factor to the formula, and focus on the entertainment of the spectator, which not only defined the style and identity of their products, for better or worse, but also was the reason why it became as great as it once was, and American fans should accept it and be proud of it. At the end, professional wrestling is a sport that seeks the entertainment of its spectators, and sports entertainment cannot be without the sport that represents it, and that is professional wrestling. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Be free to give a like or subscribe, and tell me what you think with a comment. I'll be happy to read you. Keep watching wrestling, and I'll see you in the next video.